And hello, everybody. You're very welcome to a new episode of Redefining Cybersecurity here on ITSP Magazine. I'm Sean Martin, your host, where I get to chat with some cool people about some cool things, all in the context of helping organizations and their leadership team uh, build build the business in a way that's secure and not just protects the revenue, but actually perhaps even helps grow revenue. And and it's not often a common thing to think about when we're talking about cybersecurity. So we look at everything from the teams, the programs, the operations, and of course there's technology rooted in all of that as well. And all those things come together to hopefully build a program that is successful for the organization. I'm thrilled to have John Salomon on today. John, how are you?
Very well, very hotter than the hinges of hell right now. But aside from that, Mrs. Lincoln, how is the play?
Exactly. The weather's been warm. I think it's around the globe. Record heats in many places. I'm in Manhattan at the moment. We set some records last week here in the city, and I know my business partner Marco is in Florence, and uh, he's been saying it's pretty hot there too. I think 35, 36 Celsius today. Not the 42 that you're experiencing, but hopefully you're inside safe and cool at the moment. Looks like you
I'm
are
I'm
inside.
inside with the only working air conditioner in the building, except for the wine cellar. So
There you go.
greetings from northeastern Spain, where we're getting hit by the same heat hammer as the rest of Europe.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Hopefully you stay cool, and I'm excited to chat with you today. We didn't get to meet in person in Spain when I was there for the OWASP event, but we did catch up for a few minutes that day, and we decided to have at least one chat, perhaps many. I know there are a lot of topics that you can speak to, and I'm excited to get into some of them. I think today we're going to look at the talent pipeline and mentorship and all of that good stuff. So should be fun.
That's a topic that's very near and dear to me, so I really appreciate the opportunity. And by the way, just as a quick side note, I do appreciate that you mentioned not only securing the revenue but growing the revenue. It's on one of my favorite slides on why do we do information security. I usually have the it makes us more money sometime way far in the future as people are still giving data to Facebook voluntarily. So I am hoping that your words are prophetic, and I appreciate you mentioning that.
Yeah, it's a dream I have, and hopefully we arrive there mainstream. Might be hidden under the covers at this point, but I do hope we get there. And yeah, so John, just so folks know who you are and what you're up to, and I know you have the nonprofit that you're working with as well, but maybe take a moment to give us some background on the things you've been working on, maybe your path into cybersecurity, and then we'll get into the whole talent thing.
So yeah, thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it. So my name is John Salomon. I'm originally from Switzerland, so half Swiss, half American by origin. I live in Spain. I've been doing information security work in various forms since the late 90s. I'm kind of accidentally tripped and fell into the industry back in the days when you could get a job in IT by being able to spell IT more or less. So it was a serendipitous mixture of luck, a little bit of hard work, and a lot of very kind people, which will tie into what I hope we'll talk about a bit today in terms of mentoring and talent development. I'm an independent consultant. I come originally from network security. I've done a lot of work in strategy, architecture, GRC. Spent quite a bit of time in cyber threat intel and also public-private cyber defense. I primarily consult with cybersecurity startups because they're lovely to work with. They tend to listen more than big companies, so that it's a pleasure working with agile organizations. And it also kind of ties into this discussion because many of the founders and entrepreneurs I encounter are younger career entrants, career transitioners, and it's really nice being able to give a little bit back to the industry, giving back to the creation of new things. It's a pleasure to see. You mentioned CyAN. I do a lot of pro bono work for a professional network. I'm very enthusiastic about called the Cybersecurity Advisors Network, or CyAN. Um, we are a group of international information security professionals working in cybersecurity, trust and safety, resilience, across areas like law, technology, management, politics, what have you. And it's about a 50-50 mix of professional mutual support and public service. So, we try to support the maturity and development of information security resilience, liberal democracy, free markets and trade online, and basically helping to secure the digital ecosystem that we live in today. So it's also kind of a way to give back a bit. I think the reason why we got started talking about this topic was I've worked for several not-for-profits in the information security space over the past few years. And one red thread that has been present throughout all of this has been that of mentorship. And it's a topic that's always, let's just say, not mentorship so much, but talent development, helping new people, not just young people, but just basically people who are entering or who want to enter the information security field, um, helping them understand what questions to ask, how to network, how to write their CVs, what to learn. And it's always been a topic that's frustrated me a little bit. So I've always tried to find ways of after all these many years of experience and a lot of nice people being very generous to me and helping me develop, trying to give back a bit and help not only industry but also the individuals who might otherwise be a little bit afloat. And CyAN has been a very good channel, very good means for converting that goodwill into action.
I love it. Great background, and yeah, I love that you're giving back through CyAN as well. And of course, we'll include a link to that so folks can learn more about what you're doing there. Um, Not unlike you, I think we both work hard. I think I think we come from a generation where hard work is kind of grounded in us. Um, but I also think, to your point on entering this field, it was kind of, well, it was new, right? When we started, and to your point, we kind of were drug in to cybersecurity, information security.
With me, it was I was a Unix systems administrator, and
Yeah,
somebody literally dropped the Cheswick Bellowin firewalls and internet security book on my desk and said, "Read up. We're seeing the client in 30 minutes.
right.
You're the security expert."
There you go. I was a CNE managing Novell networks, and eventually I was asked to help test, from a security perspective, Novell NLMs to make sure they weren't vulnerable.
No,
And
no,
that,
we just make. I was doing a AIX admin, so now we're making each other feel old.
I know exactly, exactly. Um, it's a very different world today. I think, I don't know if we had numbers back in the day for how many people we needed and how many short we were. But the point of we don't have enough people still exists. I don't know what that number is off the top of my head. How many tens of thousands, perhaps? Um, and yet I still hear that it's hard to find a job, hard to land a job. Experience is needed, certs are required, it becomes costly, it becomes timely in terms of preparing to enter the field. And then even still I hear that many opportunities are not granted newcomers. Maybe your perspective on that, and perhaps some insight, if you have any, on where we might need to take things because of that.
I don't know about insight, definitely opinions. I'll do
All
my
right, there
best.
you go.
And I have a few views on this. It'll probably be fairly controversial and annoy several of your viewers and listeners, but
There we go.
just yell at me, not Sean. I love a good debate.
There we go.
Uh, for me, I think when I got started was I think in 97, 98 or so. And it was really a question of I walked into a startup, an internet service provider in Switzerland back in I think 96. And the guy said, drop out of college, come work for me. I need somebody who knows how to internet. It was literally that. And I didn't want to, finish before my degree, but, um, and there was really in the large bank environments where I mainly got my start, there was this idea of let's hire smart people, pay them very good money, let them do their thing, and just trust them. And I really sensed that a sea change came around Y2K. For the younguns, that was a big thing. Look it up. And I got this is again just my subjective opinion. I got a feeling that I got a vibe that a lot of managers, especially from the finance and leadership fields, who didn't really understand technology and had previously been very happy to let people just do their thing and develop, and the mentoring and talent development were kind of ingrained, right? You'd bring new people in, you bring your friends in, you teach them, and that's how you learned. And there was a nervousness around this because, there was Y2K and people thought there should be more structure, more reporting, more quantitative factors around getting all these IT costs under control. There was a lot of taking the mickey in terms of, contractors charging huge sums, providers charging huge sums. So I kind of understand where the finance guys are coming from. I later on made the mistake of doing an MBA and seeing it from the more finance driven side. And so there came this, I think, this much more this desire to have a much more understandable, quantifiable, PowerPoint friendly approach to what your people are costing you. At the same time, this resulted in I think, a formalization of expectations and also of how do people get into the industry. When you and I started, it was a fairly freewheeling time, and that decreased tremendously. I am glad I'm not entering this field today. Despite the huge opportunities, fascinating technologies, and very, very smart people coming out of schools or apprenticeships. But I found I like this kind of anarchic, again, freewheeling approach that where I got my start. And it was very heavily dependent also on people just tolerating you screwing up occasionally and teaching you things and taking the time to talk to you, and things that you can't quantify. And nowadays, what I've noticed is there is a much stronger involvement of, on the one side, the finance, on the other side, the HR, and on the third side, the compliance and risk management people. So there's a lot of pressure, whether it's cost pressure or regulatory pressure. Things have to work. They have to happen as inexpensively as possible, and that makes it very, very difficult to get started. And I think the thing that we got talking about was a LinkedIn post I did about an article I found, which is basically ranting about the concept of entry level jobs, right? And I think the phrase that I reused, it's not my own, is entry level means entry level. And I don't want to talk too long right now, but what really got me started on this was when I was in the senior IT leadership team of a very large international bank, and that had a fabulous IT apprenticeship program. You and I both know a good security person takes a very, very long time to develop, right? It's a multidisciplinary, involved affair that requires a tremendous amount of work, a tremendous amount of enthusiasm and curiosity and attitude, but also a willingness by employers to help develop the individual. And this program was structured to do just that: drive people across different areas of the organization, different technological fields. And I said, this is great. I have all these teams I'm running. Let me bring some of these kids. They're kids, right? They're 18, 17-year-olds. Let me bring some of these kids in, right? These little snots are me 15 years ago. Perfect. I can help give back. And the response was, that's great and all, John. Each of these people count against your head count. Let that sink in for a second, right? For the non-management exposed lucky ones among you, if you're in a leadership position and generally in a corporate environment, you have a certain amount of headcount. You have a number of people that you can hire. You have objectives to comply with, to meet. Are you going to hire an expert who's experienced, who's going to be able to help you meet those experts, get your bonus, not get fired? Or are you going to risk it and get an apprentice in for a couple of months who will probably move on afterwards? That kind of brings it down to where we are.
Yeah.
And really over the next couple of years, I started, trying to figure out how we can address this situation, because I started seeing, also talking to gee, I feel old now, children of friends of mine who are entering the field, and understanding from them just how difficult it is just to kind of get a claw hold into getting started in security.
Yep. And I think so many thoughts in my head now at this point, but yeah, I'll say the simplicity then, the complexity now. Where do you start? That question was asked a few years ago. you might say networks and endpoints, but then you add in cloud and mobile, and of course there are AI and applications and APIs, and I can go on and on and on. Just all the different things we have to look at, and there are regulations that have sprouted and grown and intensified, and frameworks that are designed to be helpful, but also add complexity and a level of knowledge that's required to actually know what you're doing. Policies and reporting from an SEC perspective, all this stuff just makes it right.
Yeah, it's amazing because it's not only technology; it's you have to have
Right.
an understanding of the context. Even psychology, economics, right? How does a business function? Understanding business P&L, so you can grok the concept of budgeting for a project, even if you're a security tech who'd be happiest sitting in a corner just coding all day.
Yeah. So a lot of my listeners are security leaders, CISOs, some business leaders as well. So I want to speak to them a bit here because in the notes that you put together, it was part of the list of things we could talk about. We selected talent for today. You talked about risk in the pipeline, and I'm thinking over time, maybe a bit ironically, have we turned risk management from a cybersecurity perspective to a binary where we don't allow for, to your point earlier, we don't allow for failure. So the business can fail, and security has to have policies and backup options for to mitigate the risk when failure happens in the business, to recover and respond and all that stuff. But we don't allow much for failure in our own programs.
Well,
Is that
you,
a fair
you, you
assessment?
you know the trope, right, about security, which is basically if it breaks, what are we paying you for? And if nothing
Right.
happens, what are we paying you for?
Right.
Right. So there is definitely that pressure. And part of that is why little digression here, I am a huge fan of very, very oppressive, onerous security regulation. The CISOs may not like this, but
They're
I
all
I
screaming right now.
believe, have something, going back to this point about making money. We don't make money, we cost money, right? And one of my employees once taught me the concept of a technology debt, which is something that most companies have incurred over the years, over the decades, by underspending on security because we'll see what we can get away with. We accept the risk. And what regulation has increasingly done, it has taken that competency away from managers, from leaders. You can no longer decide whether or not you want to accept that risk. You have to make sure you put these controls in place. Now, whether these regulations actually are strong enough and enforceable enough, or people still just say, look, we'll see if we can get away with it. Maybe we'll eat the fine. We'll see if NIS2, DORA in Europe, and similar regulations are as harsh as the GDPR fines have been levied against some American tech companies will be. But it's encouraging to see that there's no longer at a regulatory level a tolerance of mediocrity in terms of spending. And you have to spend, right? So companies are under cost pressure. It's completely understandable. Shareholders are screaming down the backs of CEOs, we're screaming down the backs of the CISO, et cetera. But this is not optional any more than you cannot dump radioactive waste into a lake. You have a responsibility to society as a whole, especially as a part of critical national infrastructure. To bring it back to mentorship and talent development and risk, um, it's not just risk to your organization. If you are not investing in talent, it's risk to the entire industry and by extension to society as a whole that you operate in, right? You are allowed as a company to operate in society by not only your own success metrics and hard work, but also by the goodwill and infrastructure provided to that society. And as a result, society expects you to invest in ways of keeping yourself and by extension it safe. That was my philosophical political rant for the day. What this means though for us is that if we don't invest enough in creating a strong and sustainable pipeline of talented people, we hurt ourselves by hurting the industry. And this kind of goes into the whole, my analogy is the tragedy of the commons, right? where I will try, of course, to seek as much rent. I will try to benefit as much from common investment without investing back. But ultimately that doesn't work, right? And every company is going to want to save money, so they're going to want to invest as little as possible in developing people, just on a financial level. But that then means that the industry as a whole doesn't have enough good people. And to your point, this is a really, really contentious point, and this will get me a lot of hate, right? But I keep saying this, and I maintain this: we don't have a talent gap; we have a salary gap.
Hmm.
Even with cybersecurity salaries being perceived as exorbitant, honestly, if you're not getting enough people, sorry, you're not paying them enough. And the same goes for the kids. I mean, I see some. I live in Spain. Spain's not a high salary country. And I see what some companies try to pay, even entry level people, and it's frankly it's not enough to afford apartments on, right? So how do you expect to get people interested in the industry and investing all this time and effort if you're not only not investing the effort into training them up, into giving them the knowledge and the networking and the contextual information they need to succeed, but you're just simply not paying them enough.
Well, that comes back to being perceived purely as a cost center, right? So
Absolutely.
if you have to pay them more and you need more people, that starts to add up. And I'm wondering, again, let's speak to security and business leaders here. Is there a way to redefine how we define the roles and define the outcomes that those roles are connected to, so that it's not just a cost center, and it perhaps could be a way to connect more to the business, connect more to the revenue, connect more to market share and growth. I don't know. Are we? I mean, when we get to the CISO level, we often hear the CISO doesn't speak the business language and therefore has a hard time connecting the risk part of it to the rest of the business. Does that
I'll
start earlier? I don't know. All those things. What are your thoughts?
I'll disagree somewhat, or at least I'll put it this way: if the CISO doesn't speak the business language, that's not excusable anymore, because the CISO has not been a technology function for a long time. It is a business function, like it or not, right? So one of the reasons I didn't want to be, I used to want to be a CISO, and then I met a bunch of them. Sorry, no, I just
Hang on a few calls and you might change your mind again.
very, very no. It's just a very, very, it's a thankless task, right? It's not because they're not good people. I just, they have bigger, I have big bags under my eyes. They have bigger bags under their eyes. And that's not a good sign. But you have to understand the business context. But at the same time, I really don't want to give a glib answer to this. And it's very, I think, easy to fall into the trap of saying, well, I have a simple solution. However, I think, ironically, even though I'm somebody who is a huge fan of regulatory mandates, the increasing influence of, on the one hand, the accountants, on the other hand, the regulators, or at least the interpretation of the regulators, has caused a strictness to descend on large parts of the cybersecurity industry that needn't be there. I think to develop talent, first of all, I worked for a guy once, and I'm not going to name him, but he had a phrase that he used, which was, "You want passion, go to a whorehouse." And that kind of stuck with me, because I'm somebody who is, I hate the word passion, but I'm very passionate about this field. I don't think you can succeed in security without having a childlike enthusiasm like you would for Lego. You see my background, I'm a child. But I think one of the important things is to understand, for leaders, and this is talking squarely to your audience who are in leadership positions, to understand the need to foster that fascination, that curiosity that you get with entrepreneurs these days, that childlike desire to play with things and break things, and to give people the space to break things. You made a very trenchant point before, which was, have we become too intolerant of failure, right? There is the tech bro, fail fast, which, as we've seen, doesn't really work. It's not good. But you have to let people fail sometimes. And I think a really good aspect, especially as a senior person, quite simply, is I don't have children, right? But all my friends who have kids, they say read to your children. I think the read to your children thing applies to your employees as well, to your younger people. Read to your apprentices, talk to them. There's this sense of awe sometimes. If you're a 22-year-old coming into a new company and the head of whatever comes and sits down next to you and it takes an interest in what you were doing, that means a lot. I remember the general manager of one of my first employers, when I had a massive crisis and one of my systems was crashing all over the place, and I was there chain smoking at my desk at 2 a.m, and he'd been working late, and I just realized after about 20 minutes, he'd been just staring fascinatedly over my shoulder. That meant so much to me. Just that interest, taking an interest in what the person is doing, not just breezing through the office. I think that's a really good start. One other thing I want to mention is I think, and this is perfectly natural, I have an idea that I use very often, which is that one of the problems in security is that nobody will ever thank you for doing the right thing on principle, right? If it's not in your goals and objectives, even if you know this ought to be done, you're not necessarily going to be doing it, because there are such stringent requirements. Again, your bonus, your salary, your continued employment. But where I saw this most, I think, tragically demonstrated was when I lived in Australia. The state of Victoria has some world-class technology universities. And the organization I was working for at the time had a phenomenal scholarship and mentorship program called Building Cybersecurity Diversity, getting women into cybersecurity, an underrepresented group, right? And I don't look at this from a DI perspective, even though I think it's a good thing. I look at it as from the perspective of exploiting available talent pools, get more good people in regardless of who they are. And I must have gone to 7 or 8 of the top name universities around Melbourne and said, look, I have this scholarship program, but I'm also an experienced security executive. I have lots of stuff to share. Let me at least share my experience with these kids who are not yet graduated. Of the 2 of the 7 who even bothered to get back to me, they basically said, oh, okay, we'll sponsor a cocktail evening and we'll bring you our recent graduates and then you can interview them for the jobs that you have to offer. And I'm thinking, well, we can't place all the blame on the companies here, because on the one hand, the governments, and the other hand, the universities are doing an absolutely terrible job of this kind of soft introduction of the youth who should be gaining this enthusiasm for a field that is objectively fascinating and multifaceted and developing and endless, right? Cybersecurity is amazing. The stuff that happens, it's so cool. And they're not doing that because they're really just, okay, training, job, hiring, results, boom. And whether you're a leader, whether you're a university placement person, whether you're a government agency that ought to be getting these guys around a table together, I would really, and this is the idealist in me speaking, I would love to see them focus more on these soft aspects, the personal aspects, that it's not just all about learning topics and results.
Yeah, and we just, funny enough, we just recorded a podcast on entry-level pen testing, and this organization's putting together a program to bring folks into the field, and part of it clearly is the pen test itself. Mm-hmm. But these 2 co-founders talked about the need to actually communicate with leadership team and with the development team, and to your point on the soft skills, it's not just understanding the tech or understanding the environment, but it's fitting in. And I go back to the business as well, understanding, and it kind of ties to your other point of you're not rewarded for taking initiative, right? But if you have a clear view of the business and you know that an action will support the business or protect the business, and you have a way to communicate that, and the rest of the organization is ready to listen to you, and you've been trained from high school up through college or whatever on what that looks like and sounds like, then I think we're in better shape. But I think there, to your point, too many missing pieces in that puzzle.
I'm glad you
too siloed, perhaps. I don't know.
Sorry, I'm glad you mentioned pen testing, specifically, because I think you have to be a little nuts to be a good red teamer or pen tester or vulnerability researcher. I have nothing but mad respect to the people that are good at this. Who find bugs. I inherited in one of my roles a world quality pen test team. I would have had no chance of assembling on my own. Um, thank you, Bryce. Thank you, my predecessor. Well done. And I offered him a bottle of scotch for whoever found the coolest bug, the best vulnerability. And I mean, the glee, the sheer unadulterated childlike glee that they took in, check out what I found. That was
Yeah.
cool. I mean, it's for me, it's those kinds of interactions that also when I was on the receiving end of things like that, I'm a terrible manager. It's the reason I'm a consultant. I'm horrible at leading people, right? I can't do it. Um, but when I was in the receiving end of somebody obviously showing an interest and appreciation of what I was doing, even when I didn't have a clue what I was up against, right? Thank you. I'm so glad Google came about around when I was starting my career. But that was a major factor. And again, these kind of soft, this soft touch, this willingness to talk to people, to encourage them, to mentor them, it doesn't have to be I mean, CyAN and several other organizations have mentorship programs. Big shout out to Women for Cyber with their massive program in Europe, and there's a couple of others. um, it doesn't have to be a program, though. It just, if you're a leader in whatever level of hierarchy you're at, taking the time to take risks on people, even when they're not yet in the field, going out and talking to them and helping them understand, things like, why do you care about risk? Right. One of my favorite presentations I give is this is the most important presentation you will ever hear, and the most boring one when talking to techies, right? Because this is why you and I get paid. Right. So if you understand risk and compliance and stuff like that, you'll understand what motivates the CFO. Talking language like that and interacting with people and giving them a chance. And if you're the CFO or the CIO, not being too strict about budgeting for headcount for people who are entering the career. I think these are the easiest, in quotes, ways to get more talent motivated and not, fear this jungle of certifications that you mentioned before.
Right. And one of the things crossing my mind now, we'll wrap here in a second, but the the idea that universities are kind of missing an opportunity to feed organizations, and I'm wondering, so you went to 7 or 8, who came back and said, "This is the limited opportunity," or "Here's our limited response to what we really could do." Right?
And it wasn't just the administrator; it was also some of the student groups.
Yeah. So I guess I'm wondering, is there? Well, I'll put it back on the organizations, but is there a way businesses and their leadership team can do something different to perhaps invest in the university?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What does that look like, do you
So
think?
somehow slid into Berkeley, and I credit not the university per se, but a group they're in called the Computer Science Undergraduate Association with getting me started. This was a group decided to getting a social life for geeks, and it was kind of a product of its time, which included having the on campus labs where you would go do all nighters, and people didn't have PCs in their dorms yet. But it would let us screw around with servers that for Sequent. I don't know if you remember that company. They donated a bunch of servers. We had a Sequent Symmetry, which we eventually put down with a baseball bat. Um, we broke the bat. They used to build computers different in those days.
Yes.
But also we had, Hewlett Packard and other companies that were donating not huge amounts, but reasonable amounts of money and equipment and time, and creating also pipelines for recent graduates to talk to members of the CSUA who would have their, internal social proto Cro-Magnon social network predecessors. Um, Creating a pipeline for jobs, again, for mentorships, for showing people what this stuff even is in the first place. My Unix experience, my internet experience came from, hanging out with a friend and we wanted to go drinking, but he had some coding homework to do. So he put me in front of a diskless Sun 350 workstation playing Netrek and said, don't bother me, go play for a while and blow things up. And then it crashed, right? What do I do now? And that's what got me started. And having, if you as a company and I know some companies do this, I can't name any but I've off the top of my head, but I've seen some do this. If you are sponsoring environments where people in universities can get together and screw around and learn from each other, right, as opposed to just having to focus on their classroom deliverables and their diploma, you are doing one of the most important things, in my opinion, to develop the next generation of talent that will then come into this industry and support us in our dotage when we're old and tired. So please, don't only go to recruiting fairs, but actually consider. And we're not talking huge amounts of money. If you're talking to a student group that's got a couple of PCs, if you kick them 10 grand out of your marketing budget, they can buy a bunch of kit, and even if it's them buying, having a hot dog barbecue and getting the computer science people together with some liberal arts people, you may end up with some really enthusiastic liberal arts people like myself entering the industry just because it's something they wouldn't have had access to otherwise. And you have created through that very minuscule investment a multiplying effect way beyond what you could do with a structured, coding boot camp, or not to denigrate those, right? Or a capture the flag exercise or something like that. But again, I keep coming back to this. These soft interactions, I think, are one of the most valuable things that you can possibly do, just because you are opening the door to people to use their own the curiosity and dynamism and an initiative to start learning more about this and seek people out.
I love it. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking back to one of my early managers who was a history major. And
International relations,
there you go. And my business partner, Marco, he's a political science doctorate. And yeah, I mean,
I still couldn't code my way out of a wet paper bag, but
but you can help teams do it, or help organizations deploy that stuff better. Um, yeah, I think we can talk about this for ages. I want to wrap here and
can I throw one more thing in?
yeah, of course.
And I did say don't worry too much about the structured mentorship programs. I do want to encourage leaders of all stripes to participate in those kinds of programs. Now, blatant plug, CyAN, come join us. We're a good bunch of people. We have one. There are many others. If you have the opportunity to engage in a mentorship program, you'll get kids sometimes, or just career switchers, right, who turn out to be wet squibs, right? Not everybody is as curious, as sociable, as enthusiastic. It is what it is, right? But at the same time, it's very possible that you will get somebody who will just knock it out of the park. I remember, one of the women who was in one of my previous clients' mentorship program. She ended up doing her PhD and postdoc, and she's now at one of the NATO cybersecurity think tanks in Eastern Europe. And I'm an absolutely incredible person, right? And for me, it was just such a, and I basically forced the program to have a session at one of our conferences in London where these candidates would get up on stage and talk about their work, talk about their research. Because, if you're a student, you don't know how to present, right? So if you force them, sometimes you give them a good opportunity to kind of get a feel for people might actually be interested in what I'm doing. And there were some amazing presentations, and he's such bright, enthusiastic, brilliant minds. And seeing this person at a massive cybersecurity exercise, a couple of years down the road, it was just like, it was this chilling moment almost. This is cool, because it's not because of me or because of us, but just having maybe contributed just a tiny bit to this person's professional development. What a cool feeling. What a great reward. So if you can mentor people, if you can talk to them, if you can show them how to ask questions, what fields and opportunities there are, do it, please. It's a good opportunity. It'll help your business. It'll help the industry. It'll make you feel better too.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm glad glad you took that moment. It reminds me, I was up in Toronto for Sector, which is a Black Hat event,
Mhm.
and in the middle of the expo hall was basically a stage, a mini stage where people can come and share stories. And some of the main presenters there were members of, I believe it's called this Canadian Cybersecurity Network,
Mhm.
that does the same thing. It's basically organizations and universities coming together to support new folks coming into the industry. And there was a lady there who was a nurse, who then moved into the SOC, and she was a SOC analyst after being a nurse for many years. And I actually had her on the show, and I'll link to that podcast. It's pretty cool. But to your point, the mentorship, the more you give in, the more you'll get back out of it, and the more different organizations come together across
And
sectors. Yeah,
and it'll get us access to the psychologists, the mathematicians, the
exactly.
economists that we otherwise, the international relations idiots,
Yep,
whom we otherwise wouldn't have access to.
yep, absolutely. Well, John, pleasure chatting with you. I'm so glad we got to meet, and thrilled we had this chat. I hope we have many more.
I
I'm
hope
certain
so.
there, I'm
Thank you
certain
very
there
much
are
for the
other topics
opportunity.
we can rile up from some folks around.
Always happy
Yeah.
to, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. It's a topic that's very near and dear to me. So, if we can motivate one person to support somebody trying to enter the field,
Mm.
or thinking about entering the field, I think we've done our job.
Yep. Yep. Excellent point. Well, John, thanks so much, and thanks everybody for listening and watching this episode of Redefining Cybersecurity. Much more coming your way. I know I've been busy with events the last few weeks, so not many new episodes, but kicking things back into gear here, and I'm thrilled to share this episode with everybody with John. And stay tuned.
Thank you.